Okay. So in the next step, we will design the database. So in front of you is the schema of the user model. So it's quite simple. We have the name, the type of this is string, and it's required. That means when you create a user, the name must have some value. Name, email, password, right? Easy. Friend count is the number of friends a user has. So then when should we update the friend count? So when user add a new friend and get accepted, right, then we should update the friend count in both sides, okay, right? So each deleted is a Boolean variable, and by default we set it false. It's very common in the software platform. In some model we won't never like delete the data permanently. That means when you have a user and even they want to delete their account, you just turn the flag is delete to true, but you still store the data.
Actually, I actually read a very interesting article about it. That like some big companies like Facebook and Gmail and stuff, if you delete your account, it's never truly deleted from the database.
Yes.
Because your account still has value to it. So, and also to actually physically delete it from the database is quite difficult.
And another reason is think about if this user has a bunch of blocks, right? A bunch of blocks. And if you remove that account, so in the table blocks, you will have some blocks which the author is unavailable in your system, right? So by deleting user, is just turn the is delete to true. Right? And when you query list of user, you only query the user with a is delete false. Right? So here in the next model, we have friendship to describe the friendship between two users. Add the new friends is actually a process. Start from sending the request, waiting for the user to accept or decline, right? Or maybe after they accept, they could also remove the friend. Right? So we describe that process in the model friendship. We have from and to, which is an object ID reference to the user collection. So to denote, to notice about who's sending the request and send to which user here, right? We have a status, which is a simple string, and enum here to limit the value of status here. It could only be one of those values in this list. So we have requesting. That means when user is sending the friend request, accept it or decline, or remove it, or cancel. So cancel is when you send the request, you didn't get the answer, but you cancel the request. Right? So with those two schema, it's quite simple, right? But now you have the feature of user can register a new account, user can log in, user can add a friend to another user. Right? All of those features is described in two schema here. Enum. Okay. So it will limit the value of status. So status only receive one of the value in this array. Can only receive. If you save a status with different value, it will raise an error. All clear? Yes. Cool. So we have blocks model to store the data of a block. So it has a title, it has a content, and the author, which is a object ID reference to the user model. Right. Here we have reactions. Is the number of of the type of emoji action here. We have laugh, sad, like, love, or angry. 5 types of emoji actions, and we will count, just like friend count, we have reaction count here in the block schema. We also have review count to count how many review user write to a blog. Right? And for the block, it's also important, right? So we put the is deleted here. Right? So we don't want to permanently delete any blocks data.
Why don't you store the text of the review? So in the review count.
Yes, that is. Okay, so the explanation for that is above here, right? So like in Mongo, when you think about, or when you have a one-to-many relationship, you have to think about what kind of categories it belongs to. One to a few, one to many, or one to like millions. Yeah, it depends, right? If you have only a few reviews in one block, then maybe you can actually store the content of the review in the block collection. Right? But here we don't limit the number of reviews of a blocks. Right? And also review in our application, people can react on a review too, like give an emoji reaction to a review. So that means review is an entity in your platform. Right? So it needs a separate model for the review here. So for the review, we have content and user who wrote the review, block is which block it belongs to, and also we have a reaction, the same with the blocks, because we allow user to give react on the review too. The last schema we have is the reaction schema. So reaction schema, we have user who gave that reaction, and here user can give react to block or review. Right. So it's a little bit different here and a little bit complicated here because the type of the object this user give to the reaction is flexible. Right. It could be blocks or review. Right. So here we define a target type and target. The target here store the object ID, right? And depends on the target type, it could reference to the blocks collection or review collection. So the difference here you see is the ref is not ref to anything, it's ref path, and use the value of target type to know what kind of collection this target is pointing to, or what kind of object ID here. It's a block ID or review ID. And we have 5 different emoji reaction, and it's put in the enum of the emoji here. So the whole application is based on those models. 4 or 5 of them only, and they connect to each other, right? They reference to each other, and with all of that you can implement a lot of things. So based on this schema, I can think about, okay, now user can give reaction to review or blocks, right? I have blocks, I can write review for the blocks. So with this, I can design a social network. I have user can write blocks. Right? The other user can reviews or comments on the blogs, right? And everyone can give emoji reaction to blogs or to the review if they like. I can count the number of emoji reaction and put it just like Facebook, right? in the end of the blogs. I can also show the number of review of each blogs. Right? I can also allow user to add friends and also count how many friends each user has. It's quite simple schema, right? But the feature you can implement is like it's pretty many things you can do with this.
with friends like this, how what is the logic to have like showing the common friends and so on?
Sharing the, okay, so how to find the common friends. So first you need to find between two users, right? User A and user B. So first you need to get the list of friends of user A, get a list of friends of user B, and compare them. And then you can get the list of common friends. Or you can look into the friendship model and find all of the document that have from or to is one of the two ID of the user you want to find. Right.
Could we try to draw the relationship?
Sure.
Yes. So I can see the bigger picture.
Yeah. So let's draw it with our draw IO here. Okay, let's remove everything. So let's pick this one is user. The ID is ID, right? Name, email, and we have friendship here. It says an ID, and here is we have from and to, which reference to the user here, right? And we have status. So here we have blocks with the ID, the title of the blocks, the content, the author. Reactions. We have only five models. Review, where we have user blocks and content of the review. The last one is reaction. We have user, we have target type, which could be block or review, and we have target ID, which is the ID of the object we want to point to, and the last one is the emoji. 5 things like that, right? Okay, so from here is the point to the user ID, right? What kind of relationship it is?
User to friend.
One to many here, and yes. So we have one point to here and many point to the from here. One to many. Right. We have the same relationship between the two here is also point to this one. So one user ID here is point to from and to here. Right. The status here is a list, one of the lists. Right, accept, request, or decline, etc. Block here, we have the author here also point to user. Right. Also in the one-to-many relationship, is point to author here. Okay. The reaction here is just a statistic component, statistic attribute. It's not point to the reaction, it's count how many reaction a block has, right? And the reaction here, the user here is also point to user ID here, right? And the target type here is could point to block or review. For the review here, we also have one-to-many relationship. And the one side is a block ID, and the many side is point to the block here. Quite simple, right? But this is all we need for the SocialBlog API.
Simple.
It's just five models, right? And it just took like 15 minutes to explain every single attribute of each model. Okay, first of all, do you understand the meaning of each attribute of each model here? Okay, you know where it's pointing to. Right? The reference attribute is pointing to which model. Okay. So the next point I want to talk about is when you design those kind of model, you want to test it. Right? If you want to test it, usually after designing the model, you might start building the API and then test it with the Postman. Right? But then you face against a problem that the bugs or the errors could be the Postman, the API with the controller, or it could be the Mongo setup configuration. Right? In programming, because we handle a lot of components in one application, we want to test it separately. We want to test the model schema, mongoose, etc., separately. And after we finish testing that, we can confidently move on to the routes controller to connect things together. Right? And if we have an error, we know that it must be in the controller example, right? Because we have tested the mongoose. Right? Okay, so first let's put our model in the folders models here. Right? Yes.
Can you go back to that? I have questions.
Yes.
I wonder why block would have, I mean, like in the review collection, why the block idea can have many block. I think it's backward, right?
It's backward, sorry, yes, correct. Let me remove it. So one block, yes, excellent. Yeah, one block can have many reviews. Correct. Okay, so next here I will create a bunch of model here, user.js, block.js, review.js, friendship.js, and reaction.js. Okay, now let's come to our node, and you can type this to memorize the syntax, but I will save you some keystroke here and just copy and paste. Friendship, blocks. Programming is so easy. Yes. Oh, I put the user schema in reaction. Yeah, just follow the notes here. Create user, put this in the user, put this in friendship, put this in blocks, review, and reactions. tell me when you are done, and we can move on.
Sometimes I was copying keystrokes now. So Control C, Control V, Control A. Alt tab.
Facebook and it's Control S like
Type in an email, Control S.
yes.
Wow, this is so fast. Okay, if you are done, let's create a new folder testing and put test schema in it.
So how long it takes to write all this from scratch? Oh.
Or what? Or the test?
How long it took you to do that like from scratch?
Yeah, so now we will slow down here and
But now for you, how long is it easy? Just type.
yes.
Well, I'm pretty sure, like, to test, you keep a copy of this somewhere.
Copy of this file.
Yeah, you.
It depends.
Syntax.
Okay, so here, for sure you can reuse this, but this test file is depend on your schema. Different schema we could have different file, but the principle is still the same. So next step, we're going to create a bunch of fake data, put it in the database, and see whether we can save data successfully. That's a very important one. Whether we can see our data using the compass here. Using compass, whether we can see the data, right? And also we want to test some plugin with the mongoose. You know, when user add a new friends, we need to update the friend count in both accounts, right? And we want to set it up to do it, to implement automatically. Then after that, we just need to focusing on the logic, right? So allow user to add friends, and behind the scenes, mongoose will take care of update the friend count for us. Or example, when user given reactions, we need to update the number of reaction in blocks or review, right? And we also want to do it automatically. Right? For those things, we use the mongoose middleware plugins and some few steps. That we want to implement here and test it with our script. So in this script, the first thing here is we write a function to clean the data, because we're going to generate a bunch of random data, and at the end we want to clean it up, right? So the clean data function basically just drop the database, drop the entire database. So be careful with this. Sometimes you test this in a test database, right? If you have some data in your production database, right? How can I change my change to a test database for this? you can come to the DNV file here and change this to example. Let's put test here. Okay. Yeah, but it's okay for now if you start from scratch. We have no data, so there's no problem, right?
Delete the database once.
No. I'm very careful with that.
But then again, it shouldn't, like if you're a junior and that happens, it's not really your fault. You're supposed to have a backup.
It's your fault, but they shouldn't put you in that position to
Yeah.
because whoever it is enter is the one who's
Yeah, so only do this on the test database or on the empty database. Right? So here you can drop the collection one by one, or you can entire drop the database like this. Right? Sometimes if this could raise an error if you don't have that database or collection. Right? Like in the first time, you have no data, no database, so this will raise an error, but we just ignore it, right? For the first time, we try to drop a undefined things, it will raise an error. So just put it in a try and catch, and just console log the error and ignore it. Right? Okay, so this function is a helper function to put in a range, min and max, and it will return an integer random number. Because we create random data, we need a function to generate random number. Example, the blocks, we will add 3 reviews from 3 random users to that block. Right. Then we will use this function.
Why is your minimum the ceiling and your maximum the floor?
Is to inclusive the min and max also.
No, but I'm saying shouldn't maximum be the ceiling and minimum? It's like it's the wrong way around.
Ceiling means
ceiling
ceiling is the root and max is the floor.
Yeah, so surely the roof is going to be a higher number than the floor.
Example, if you put in 1.5 and 3.6, then it will get from 2 to 3. That makes sense, because if you you set the mean is 1.5 and you take 1, it's outside the range, right? If you put the mean is 1.1 and you floor it, right, it will take 1.
Yeah.
And 1 is outside the range because you want a range from 1.1 to 3. Okay, so just a function to generate a random integer, a function to remove the database, right? And here we import our model. In this, we import Faker and import Mongoose. Right. Okay. So let me take this part from here to the test schema. Yes. You mean what is the difference? Or It's different. Yes, it's different. You will see it now when we implement those. But the middleware in Express, okay, so middleware is something like jump in between the process and do something, right? So everything that's jump into between the process and do something is called middleware. So in Express, the process here is request response, right? The front end sends the request and the server responds. That is the process. And the middleware in Express is before you respond, you do something. Right? Before you pass the request to the controller, you do something. Example, you validate the data in the request. So the request is from the client side, sending data to the server side, right? Sending data to the server side. And you want to control that data to validate the data.
So we call middleware.
Yeah, yeah. So the function does handle the validation of the data inside the request before passes to the controller. It's a middleware, right? It jumps in between the process. Right?
Can you allude to middleware, please?
Okay, Mongoose middleware. What is the process of Mongoose here? Example: save a user. Save a user, right? Or save a new friend list, friendship. Right? Okay, so if I want to save or create a new friendship, right? The process here is create a new friendship and save it, right? The middleware here is before you save it or after you save it, you update the friend count in the model user. The process here is save a friendship, right? And after you save it, you update the friend count here. We will have it now, right? Okay, so in this function, the next function is the main function of this test file. We're going to clean the data first, right? Delete everything, and we're going to create 10 users. Okay. So the number of 10 is stored in user num here. So if you want to create 30 users, just change this to 30. Right. Okay, so now take a look here. It's just a simple for loop from 0 to 9, right? Which means it will run 10 times. And for each loop, it will create new user. User create, and you pass in faker.name file name, faker.internet email. Those functions you can find in the faker.js document. Right? So faker.name first name, right? Faker.name last name, or the entire name could be generated by faker.name file name here. To get a random email, it belongs to the internet module here, faker.internet.email. Right? If you need something, just look into this one, pick the function and put it there, right? Put it to the place you want. So here I generate name, email, and just a random password 123. And after I successfully save the user, I add it to the list of users that I create here. Make sense? Just create 10 users, right? Okay, so for the friendship between user, I'm going to create for each user 2 friends. For each user 2 friends. And the logic here is, I need to explain it. So example, you have user from 0, 1, 2, 3, to 9, 10 users. So I will add friend 0, 1, add friend 0, the first user, add friend the second user, etc., and the last one here will add friend the first one. Then each user has 2 friends. Why? So if I add first user add friend with the second user, etc., and the last user add friend with the first user, each user will have 2 friends. Make sense? Because example this one, right? He's a friend of 0 and friend of 2. Okay, so the code here, we have one loop that's run 10 times the user num, and for each loop here we create a new friendship from the user I and the user I plus 1. If I plus 1 is equal user num. That means that is the last user, right? Then replace I+1 with 0, which is the first user. If you reach the last user, then add friend to the first user.
User number 3 going to be framed as user 0 or user 7. So we can have more than 2 friends.
Yes. They could. They could add friend too, but we are generating data, right? We are, and you know that the 10 user here it generated randomly, right? So even you add user 0 with user 1, they are just random people. Right? Okay, and then we move on to each user will write a number of blocks. Each user will write a number of blocks. And that number is defined here in the other num variable. We set 3, but you can increase this if you want. So here we will loop through every user, and for each one of them, right, we loop through the other num, which is 3 in this case, and then we create the block for each loop, right, the block. The title of the block is just a random sentence from the lorem. Lorem here is random text that has nonsense random text. It's look like this. If you click on text here, so lorem words it look like this, right? Or no, I don't think it has any meaning. It's just random text. It looks like sentence, but it doesn't have any meaning, right? It has some meaning?
Yes,
Really?
Yeah, language.
For the whole time, I think that is just random text.
It's like a very old language, like Spanish, French, Italian, or
I thought they just have like random number of characters and then just put random.
Yeah, I think so.
Just copy that into Google Translate for from Latin. Yeah, Lauren Ipsum. It's a placeholder. Okay. If you just go to Google Translate,
I don't think there's a translate for that.
there is Latin to English. Google Translate, Latin to English. Yeah, you got Latin to English.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to Google Translate,
This looks like some script from the mirror or something of Lord of the Rings.
see that's detected.
Yeah, but you cannot convert it to English here.
No, it is converted.
Oh, it has some meaning here.
Labor and sorrow, some important.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, it's fine. It's okay. It could be Latin. It could be anything.
I think that it would be more efficient to just like have random number of characters and then random number of characters inside, so it's easier.
Yeah, but somehow it looked like a real paragraph here. Right? It looked like for the perspective of UI. If you put this text, it looked like some content. Right? Okay, and for each block, after we finish creating a new block, we will create the other number of review for each block. Right? And the user who wrote that review, we use the function getRandom, and we pass in the range, which is from 0 to user number -1, to get the ID of that random user. So with this for loop, right, we will generate 3 reviews from 3 random users that we have just created before. Right? we also add 3 random reactions to the block, like this. And at the end, we print out generate data done and finish. Okay, so this code depends on your schema. You might change the model here. You might change the content here, right? But the principle is quite simple, right? Most of the time, you put a remember to define user num or other num here, so that you can change the number here later on, and then just run a for loop and generate a bunch of data here. And this is also a good way to practice work with your database. To practice, if you can create a new data to your database, then later on when you move on to the controller, it's easy, right? You just need to put it in the right place and save the data in your database. Okay, please allow me to copy this function to the test schema. Okay, the next function here is look into the block model and get a random number of block out of the data. So we start with counts how many blocks we have in the total block number here, and we will run this for loop this block number of time, and just find one block, and skip here is the we skip the first a random number of blocks at the beginning. So get a random number of block is exactly like skip a random number of block and take the first one. So populate here. Do you know what is populate here? Anyone remember?
It's full data.
Yes. It will fill the data of the user in the block. So when you get a block here, what you get is the author, which is an user ID. If you populate author, it will look into the user database model and get that user information and save it as author in the block and return it to you. No problem, buddy. Okay, so how about let me copy this and remove the populate and then add it to, and you can see the difference, right? Okay, so the main function, because we after we generate the data, we don't need to generate the new data for every time we test, right? So here we have a simple logic. If we want to reset the DB, we pass true to this function, and if reset DB is true, we clean the data and generate new data. Right? Otherwise, we just get a random plots out of the data. Okay, let's put the last piece of code here. And next step, we will use the functionality of the node daemon here. In the app.js, right? In the app.js, let's put the required testing test schema here below the mongoose connect to mongo URL. So that means after you successfully connect to the database here, right? You need to add a curly brace here so that is know this is a function, and we add one more line, which is adding the testing schema. And right after that, you can see the code here automatically run because we saved the app.js, right? And it will trigger the test schema and generate a bunch of data here. Okay, let's slow down and make sure everyone gets to this point. Yeah, you need to add a curly brace here and put require below the console log. Okay, cool. Not yet.
Whoa.
Okay, now let's open Compass and check whether you can see that figure in the moves. Let's open Compass, connect to your relay, and see whether you can see.
There we go. Cool. Got it.
For one S,
Oh, yeah.
Get you okay?
Can we move on? Everyone?
So if you want to trigger on the compass,
Yeah, so now let's open Compass. Open Compass and refresh. Okay, so here, remember I changed the Mongo URI to social blog test, right? So the data now is here in social blog test, and for the first thing we need to check is the number of documents of each collection here. We have 10 users, right? Correct. We have 30 blocks. Each user writes 3 blocks. We have 10 friendship, right? We have 90 reviews and 90 reactions because each block has 3 reactions and 3 reviews. Right. So the number of data here is correct already. Right. So now let's come to Tuan's question about the population. Right. So here, this is the output of get random blocks. Right. And you can see in the author here, we have the user information of the author of this block. Right. And thus happen because we add populate here. So if I remove populate and save it, you can see now in the get random one block, I have only an ID of the author. I have only an user ID here. So if I remove populate author, then in the field author here, I have one user ID. Right.
But also I have that, and I have pop. Can I see again what's populate?
Okay. So if I have populate here in the get random blocks, right? And now, okay, so we already have the data, right? So now let's remove this true so that the code will not generate new data. Save it, and okay, so here in the random blocks here we have the reaction, the information of the blocks, and in the author field we have all of the information of the user. So yeah, so that is how populate works. Tuấn, are you get it? Okay.
I feel like I know this point the populate is you only get the ID author.
Yes.
And when you have populate, you get the full information.
Yes.
Of you.
Yes. So populate will take the ID and find it in the user collection and find that author for us. Right.
So it change the ID of the authors.
Yes.
If I where to find it?
In the user collection. In the user collection.
Do you mean that it's a relation like one to many and it will go or it will looking for the information based on that relation? You go backward and get information.
It's user ID. It's user. So without populate, right, it will use this ID. Right. So 3F6D, right? 3F6D. It will take that ID and find 3F6D, this user, right? Maurice Windler, right? And put it here for us. 3F. Okay, so we get another block. Sorry, but this is the ID of the author. Okay, so populate means take the ID and find the information of that user. And it's no that it need to look into the user model because in the blocks right here, we reference to the user model here. Right, so it's know that the author here is the object ID of the collection user. And Mongoose will like find the information for us. It's quite convenient, right? Just add one line and you get the author's information.
Question: the object ID is the document from
The object ID is the
the database.
yes, yes,
The document.
yes. It's the underscore ID here. Right. You can see here object ID. For each document, we have an object ID. Okay.
I think you have an email.
Email.
You have an email.
This one.
Your email box. I think you have an email on your email box.
Sorry, don't get it.
Check your email box.
Okay. You see the pop-up here. And it's recorded. Okay, guys. So in the next step, we want to add 2 fields to each collection. One is the created at, and one is updated at. So whenever we create a new document, we want to store the timestamp when we did create it. And thus is needed in all of the collections, right? In user, blogs, review, whatever. Right? And when you update the data, we also want to store the time we modify that document. Right? So there are 2 fields, updated at and created at. It's available in every collection. Right? So, and we don't want that whenever we create a new document, we need to get the timestamp and put it in create at and save it. Right? So here, the next terminology is the plugins. The plugins here is a bunch of code that we can add into all of the collection, so that we call global plugins. Right? Or you can add it in a specific schema. Right? Depends, your choice. Right?
So you got that function and then you just import it where you need it.
Yes. Okay, so now let's take a look what is the effect of that. So let's create a new folder in models called plugins. Plugins. And inside that folder, let's create the file name modified at. Modified at.js. And put the code here. So this function is take a schema and option, and then the schema here we add a new field to the schema, updated at, created at. And here is a middleware that we set up. Before, pre is mean before you save anything, just create get the timestamp and save it as updated at. If that is the first time you save something, that means the created at is empty, then set the value at that moment to created at. So this code, this line, the line 7 here, only run one time when you create the document for the first time. And after it gets some value, the next time you save it, it won't change. But the value of updated add always change whenever you save something.
And that syntax at the top, the very first line number 1, is that just you?
Just to export. I think.
Yeah, so you basically just consolidating all the
Yes.
extra code into one.
Okay, and when you want to add these plugins to all of the schema, right, once option is you come to every schema here and you do block schema, you add those plugins. But this plugin is called global plugins. That means we add it to every collections. Then you can do it with Mongoose plugin and like this. So we will add this before the Mongoose connect to the database in the app.js. In the app.js, before connect to the database, we add that plugins. Okay, so now we need to regenerate the data because the old data doesn't have that plugins. How to regenerate data? Put true here. Right. If resetDB is true, then regenerate data. Save it. And now you can see in the new blocks, we see updated add and created add here. Work like a chime.
Timestamp though, what is 7727?
I think that is the millisecond. I put it in a folder plugins inside models.
The code for the API.
Here, right below the next last step. This is the code. So this is an example of global plugins. In the next plugins, we will create a plugin that it will find the data that is delete is false. And this is not global plugins because we have only 2 models that have the is deleted flag, which is user and block. We don't have is deleted in the other model. And so the only difference is instead of add the plugins using the Mongoose plugin, you come to each model and you add the plugin there. That means this okay, so let's take a look at this plugin. Its name is deleted false. And here is another regular expression syntax. Before you find anything, if the is delete is not in the condition, then is delete is false. You add a condition that is delete must be false.
Is deleted is false already by default?
Yeah, by default, yes. So let's add this code in our project and then change it to see, to play around with that a bit. So here inside the folder plugins, we create is deleted false.js and we add the plugin here. And then come to the block schema. Here we do block schema dot plugin, right? And we pass require plugin / is deleted. To the block schema. Follow this node. So we do the same for the user schema here. Okay, so now let's play around with that. Let's change this to true. If you change this to true, the output of get random blocks is null. Because now by default, all of the blocks is deleted false. And if you add the condition is deleted is true here, you won't find any blocks.
That doesn't delete from the data.
It's not. It's not. Okay, so one question. What if I want to find a block that is already deleted? That means is delete is true.
Just find is deleted true.
Yes, correct. So if you in your function you do like block.find and you pass is deleted true here, right? If you have this, right, it will work like normal because you have this condition. We only add is delete is false if we don't define the value for is delete. So if you want to get the list of blocks that are already deleted, then just add is deleted true in the find function.
Why is equals false? Why is it a single equals? Why is it a...
Because we are assign a new condition which is delete false to the condition.
So if it is undefined, you change it to
Yeah, you
false.
change this to yes, I change this to false.
I have a question.
Yes.
I understand like the API statement that information is modified, so it's will gonna be initialized as false.
Yes, correct.
So why didn't work with the true?
It will work with the true.
But it didn't appear. Why it didn't appear? It should output the known values in the console. Why so?
Okay. You mean when I change it to true, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because in the function get random block, right, we find a block, right, and in this it will add the condition that block must have the is deleted true. If I change this to true,
Yeah.
right, it will add this condition
Yeah.
to the find here. And because all of our block has is delete is false, all of our block by default, right? By default, right? By default,
The schema.
by default is false. Right.
So then, what's the how is complete or what? We have a default is as a false.
Yes.
And then we try
Yes. If we add the condition that is delete is true in our condition, then we won't find any block because all of the blocks is delete is now false.
So you realize that the secret because we have like the list of block and then
Mhm.
is false.
Yes.
So if we
Here?
try to solve for everything,
Yes.
Rules, we will nothing. is
Yes,
solved.
yes, yes. Correct.
So the thing is, so that thing is lost. So the thing is like we want to look for something new, isn't it?
Is yeah, because we don't actually delete the block. Whenever we delete a block, we just change the flag. It's deleted to true. It's deleted to true.
Yeah, but this one is the condition for looking something.
So this one is for automatically add. The condition is deleted is false for every query. For every time you try to find a block or a list of block.
Because usually if you want to find blocks or list of blocks, right, you want to find the not deleted one, unless you purposely add a true is deleted equal to true means inside the file one. For example, like 117. On line 117, you have a block of is deleted. Along true, then you find true, the deleted one. If
Okay.
you specify anything, you
Uh,
have to find the undeleted.
Let's have another example. Okay. So now we have 30 blocks, right? So let's say I want to remove this block, right? So here I change is deleted to true, right? And update it. Right? So now I still have 30 blocks, right? But one of them, just one of them, has the value is deleted is true. Right? So now let's say user want to see the list of all the blocks in the database, right? So to do that, right, we need to access to block and we find everything, right, in the database. But we need to define is deleted must be false. Right? We just want to return the block that is deleted is false. Right? And let's count how many blocks we have here and then console log the number of blocks here. Make sense? So now I expect to see how many blocks. 29, right? 29, right? Oops, is deleted is it's the regenerate data. Sorry, need to remove this first, and okay, refresh this. Change this to true. Update. Come back to our code. Save. So now I see 29. Right. This is the list of blocks that I return to the front end. Right. Okay, so now what if I want to, like as an admin, I want to see the list of deleted block. And I need to change this to true. Right. Save it. And now I see only one block there is the deleted, right? Okay, but this logic usually most of the time when I find a block and return to the front end, I need to set it to false, right? And because it's so tedious and I don't want to remember this every time I query for blocks, I create the plugins that automatically add this condition for me. Right. And that's plugin, so now even if I don't have that condition, I still see the, okay, why is the 30? Okay, let me restart the server. Oh, it's true. It should be false. Hmm?
Can you show us again how to capture the database from the MongoDB bus?
How the data in
How we can use the MongoDB bus to connect to the database?
you open Mongo Compass and you hit connect.
Yeah. I am feeling
Just hit connect
URL.
here.
Yeah. No, I'm doing that. Oh, just connect.
Yeah.
We don't need to type down.
No. It's by default will connect to your local
Okay.
Mongo.
Ah.
Hmm?
Cái Google Compass của em hay không biết là nó đang cài hay chưa, không chứ không xài được bây giờ nó kêu em tải để trách nhiệm em được.
Hmm.
Again with the questions bizarre.
Okay, if you add a console log inside this login, and you print out this dot condition underscore conditions, you will see these two lines. You see two lines here. The first one is for finding a find one block, and the second one is to populate the author.
Anh xin lỗi. Tại bạn em nói tội nó không có hiểu tại sao. Xin lỗi.
Is it look familiar to you? Like Monday last week, we worked a lot with those MongoDB syntax to find the data. Can anyone tell me what kind of ID here? What is this ID?
It's some ID with some numbers
Person.
That is the author ID.
Exactly, it's the author ID. So here you can see if we put a console log in the plugins, it will print out twice here. And because we have the first one is to get the one block, and the second one is to get the author. Thank you. Okay, so right now in the data of one block, we can see the review count here is 0, right? Even we know that we already added 3 review each block, right? But the number of review here is still 0 because we haven't done anything about that, right? So what kind of what is the process to update this? What kind of event does trigger the update of this field? John, what do you think?
We need to add the review count on.
Mm-hmm. Review count. It's quite simple. What is the logic? When do you need to add or increase the review count? When? But I mean, when do you need to increase that field? Write some review, right? Hit submit, right? And that data will be sent to the server, and the server will create a new document for the review collection and save it, right? So, and in that process, we want to add a middleware. Right after it saved the review, it will update the block review count. Right? That's the middleware we add into the process of saving a review. You get that logic? So we will add a middleware in the process of saving a review. That will update the number of review count.
You have to change that back to true for it to work.
True means regenerate data. So because so just put it through there. Oh.
No, I'm asking once you add the review,
Yes, when I add the review, right? Now I come to the review schema, right? And I need to add a middleware. It's a post mean after save. After save, right? After I save the review, right? I need to do something. And that action will be put in a function. So after I save the review, do something. Okay. So inside this function, we need to calculate the number of reviews of a specific block, right? And then update it. Right. Okay, so when I create a new review, I have all of the information here, right? When I create a new review, then after I save it, I need to get to find all of the review that have this block ID and count how many reviews we have with this block ID. Kind of like review, find all of the review that has this block ID, count, and then access to the block model, update that. Okay, so that's it, the overview overview concept. So now let's write a function to do that for us. Right? So we will write a function that's called calculate reviews, and this function will take a block ID as the input. So in this function, it will look into the review schema, review collection, find all of the review of this block and count it, and then come to this block, update the review counts. Right. Okay, how can I get the review count? I need to go through find all of the block that have this block ID and then count. And after I did it, I will go to the block I need to import the block schema here to this schema, and then here I do block dot find by ID and update. I will find the block ID and then update the review count to my review count that I calculate before above. Right. Import block from with the capitalized B. No, it's just a normal function, and it's asynchronous because we use await inside the function. Normal function. Okay, the one very special thing here is the keyword static. What does static mean? It doesn't change. Yes, it doesn't change. It belongs to the OOP concept. So this is a static method of the schema. So now for every instance of review, you can call this function. And the word this here will reference to that instance of review. Thay Okay. So when you save a review, right, this one here is called an instance of the review. It's basically a document. So when you save a review, right, it's an instance of the review schema. Right.
So instead of writing new instance review, you just use this.
You can use this function in every instance of the review. Arbitrary instance. All of the instance of review will have this function.
The import, this blog import, the import file, can I see it?
Singular. Sorry, plurals. Yes, plurals.
So each one should have 3 reviews.
Okay, so let me finish the middleware here, and to finish the last piece here. In the middleware, we do this dot constructor dot, we call the function calculate reviews, and we pass in this dot block. Okay, so that is the last concept of today, the last one. If you understand this, then the next middleware is follow the same principle, the last concept. Okay, so our question now is when we save a review. When we save a review, that means when we want to save what is inside the review, we have user, which is a bunch of ID. We have block, which is a 92. And we have the content. Something. This is one review, right? Do I miss anything? That's it, right? When we save a new review, we pass this information to the review.save or create, right? And the thing we want is after we save this review, we want to find this block and increase the review count in that block. Right? Okay, so in the collection we have reviews, which is a collection of a lot of reviews. Right. We have blocks, collection. A lot of blocks. Right. So let's say we add a new review here. This is the new one. After we add a new review, we want to count inside this collection, right? All of the review does have this block ID. maybe 2 of them or 3 of them, let's have this block ID. We count it. Let's say we find 4 of them, right? And then we come to the blocks collections. We find this block. Maybe it's here. And we update the read count with this number in the block schema. That's the process. Okay, so that process starts at this line. At this line, we add the middleware. Post means after. So pre is before, post is after. After set a review, right? It's inside the review schema. So after set a review, call this function. And this function is here. Count the review and update the block.
Jacob's third.
Okay, now here you see this dot find, right? This dot find, and this one is the review schema, the review model, the review model, and then statics here is we are defining a function for the review model that we can use. It's similar to the class component in React. For the class component, when you define a component in class, you use this refer to the component. Let's slow down for a few minutes, or better than that, let's have a break. Okay. I have a meeting at 4.